We're going to go over the Algebra 1 Solving Quadratics Review worksheet. We're just going to do one of each type of problem if possible. So first we're going to start with section 1, numbers 1 through 4. So we're graphing in these. It says solve the equation by graphing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and choose, how about to work with number 4? I don't want to just take the easiest ones away from you. So on number 4, it is not in standard form yet. And so what I can do is I can either bring the negative x squared towards the right, or I can bring the 7x and the 18 towards the left. It technically does not matter. So I'm going to choose to add the x squared to the right, just because then I only have to move one item, not two. So then I'm going to have x squared plus 7x plus 18. All right, and that is in standard form. So here are my two options. I can, if I'm in standard form, I can find my vertex using negative b over 2a, and then whatever that number is my x value, and I plug it back in to find my y value. Then I could make a table of points. My other option is I could factor it, so it is in x-intercept form. So here, either option will work. I feel like most of you guys will want to do negative b over 2a, so I'm going to go with that. So if I do negative, b is 7 over 2 times a is 1. So that's negative 7 over 2, which is negative 3.5. So that's my vertex for the x value. And then I plug negative 3.5 back in for the y value. So I'm going to pull up my calculator here. All right, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm plugging it back into this equation, x squared plus 7x plus 18. Make sure that when you do it, you use parentheses anytime you're plugging something back in. So I'm plugging in negative 3.5 squared because it's x squared. And I'm going to do plus, and then it's 7 times x is negative 3.5, and then plus 18. So that's 5.75. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to do negative 3.5 and then up 5.75. 3, 4, 5. I'm just going to have to estimate about where that would be. All right, sorry, it keeps doing that. Okay. All right, and so then I can put my axis of symmetry down here. And I can figure out more points by creating a table. So remember, on our table, if you're at your vertex of negative 3.5, 5.75, you want to do a couple points to the right and to the left. So if I'm going to the right, then I'm going to go just next door is negative 3, and then negative 2, and then negative 1. I probably don't even need to do that many. But so how I'm going to pull up a table, I can plug those x values in, or I can just go to y equals, clear out anything you have. I'm going to type in x squared, and it was plus 7x plus 18. And that was what this equation was right here. So once I get that typed into the y equals, if you're on the middle school calculators, you hit table and then type this in. On this calculator, I'm going to go to second, and then I'm going to hit this graph button because right above it says table in blue. So second and then the graph button. And then you can look right down here and you can look for negative 3 is at 6, negative 2 is at 8, and negative 1 is at 12. So it's 6, 8, and 12. Now on your middle school calculators, you can pull up the table by pressing table, typing the equation in, then going down to OK, and you can pull this up. So negative 3 is at 6, that's right there, and negative 2 is at 8. It's right there, and then I'm not going to go up to 12 because it's off the graph. And then I can reflect the points over because remember the axis of symmetry creates a mirror image. Now, your solutions when graphing, solutions are where the x-intercepts are. So you're looking when you're solving by graphing for x-intercepts. And since this will never go through the x-axis, that means there are no real solutions. If it did go through the x-axis, then you put x equals and whatever numbers it is on the x-intercepts, and those are the solutions. Okay, let's look at this section. Number 5 through 8 is solve using square roots. So remember that when you're using square roots, you can do it if there's an x squared but no x. So you get x squared equal to a number, and then when you're ready, you square root both sides. Or if you have parentheses squared equal to a number, then you square root both sides. So let's go ahead and do, how about number 6? So the parentheses squared is by itself, so I'm going to square root both sides. All right, and so I have x plus 8 equals, now I have the square root of 72 is a decimal. I'm just going to leave it for right now as, let's just look it up. So I could simplify it also in simplest form, but they told me at the top of the thing to do it, they said to do it to the nearest hundredth, I think. So the square root of 72 is 8.49 when you round, and negative 8.49. So subtract the 8 and you get x equals 0.49, and subtract the 8 and you get x equals negative 16.49. So that's similar on number 10 because you can see it's got a parentheses squared. On number 5 and number 8, you want to get x squared by itself first and then square root both sides. But it's got to be all alone. It's got to be only x squared, no number next to it, and then you can square root both sides. Okay. On 9 through 12, it's solving each equation using the quadratic formula. So let's see here. How about I go ahead and do number 11 with you? So remember that it must be equal to 0 before you begin. So I'm going to add the 5 over, so I get 8x squared plus 6x plus 5 equals 0. All right, and so we have our quadratic formula, and then we're just going to identify what A, B, and C are and plug them in. So A is 8, B is 6, C is 5. All right, so we have negative B plus minus big square root B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. So I simplify the negative 6. On the bottom I have 16. And then I'm going to type the discriminant. Remember, the discriminant is that number underneath the square root, the B squared minus 4AC. Sorry about that. And I'm going to type that into my calculator. So I have 6 squared minus 4 times 8 times 5. All right, so I get negative 124. Remember, you can't square it in negative, so because of that, I have no real solutions. If I did get a number, then I would try to square root it. And so, like, let's say that had been a positive square root of 124. What I would have done is I would have pulled up my fraction, and I would have typed in negative 6 plus, and then I would do the square root of 124, unless it was some nice square root. I'd go ahead and simplify it, over 16. And then I'd do it with a minus. And I'd do it again. And so you could also just hit enter on it, and then go change that plus to a minus. Now that's what we do if this number had been positive, but it wasn't, so it's no real solutions. Okay, so on 13 through 16, sorry, I labeled this wrong. I believe I changed numbers. But anyway, on this section, we are solving by completing the square. So let's go ahead and do this one together. So the first thing I do is I get the C value out of the way, because when I'm completing the square, I want to choose my own number. So I add the 22 and I get 28. Okay, so then we use our box that we're factoring with, and I put x squared here. I take the minus 8x, I divide it into 2, so it's minus 4x minus 4x. X minus 4, x minus 4. All right, the number that completes the square would be 16. So you've got to put a 16 on this side, but to do that, you have to put a 16 on the other side. So on the right side, 28 plus 16 is going to be 34. And then on the left side, this turns into x minus 4 times itself, so that's x minus 4 squared. Okay, so from here, you square root both sides. So you square root the 34. All right, and I got 5.83, so x minus 4 equals 5.83, and x minus 4 equals negative 5.83. You add the 4, so one of my answers is 9.83, and add the 4 here, so negative 5.83 plus 4 is negative 1.83. That's our two answers. So get the C value away because you want to choose your own number here to complete the square. Once you find that number, it goes on both sides to stay balanced. You rewrite the left side as parentheses squared, and then you solve using the square roots. All right, finding the C value that completes the square, I'll just get you started here. It's literally just asking you for what C is. So if you could do the previous problems, you got this one. You take the 32x and you split it in half, so 16x and 16x. So this is x plus 16 and this is x plus 16. It's seriously just asking you what number completes the square. So it's whatever that number is. Okay, this section says determine the number of solutions that the quadratic will have. So whenever you want to determine how many solutions, you're going to use the discriminant, which is that b squared minus 4ac. And remember, if it's positive, then it'll have 2 real solutions. If it's a negative, it will have no real solutions because you can't square root a negative. And if it is equal to 0, then you will have 1 real solution. So on all of these, you get them equal to 0 first. Then you do the b squared minus 4ac, and you don't have to finish it. You're just telling how many solutions. You're not telling what they are. All right. And so this one, you're just going to do your best on this, finding the x-intercepts. So finding the x-intercepts is basically solving. And so if you're going to do that, you're going to put a 0 here. And I would probably use quadratic formula just because the numbers don't look like they factor easily. And then you're going to think about the meaning in the situation and explain what it means. On this one, you want to know when does it touch the ground. So when it touched the ground, you put 0 for height, and then you solve. Think about how you'd solve since this has an x squared and not an x. Think about what the best way would be. Okay, on this one, after how many seconds is your friend at a height of 4 feet? So they're telling you here, h is 4. So you're going to put a 4 right there. And then I would move the 4 back over and choose how you solve. Based on these numbers, I'd probably quadratic formula this. And then we can answer those questions. And then this one, you're thinking what methods would be possible. Some of them have more than one method. So what I would do is like, if it would be possible to graph it, even though I don't want to, I would just put a little check mark. And so if it's not possible to square root, I put an X, or you could put yes and no.